Hello and welcome back to Mindful Moment Crochet. Today we are going to talk about a stitch that started off as my least favorite stitch, but I really wanted to learn how to make like trivets or hot pads, and now it's probably one of my mindfulness skills, to be quite honest with you. It's super relaxing. The only thing that probably isn't relaxing is having to use cotton yarn, which if you've ever worked with cotton yarn, you might understand that. It's just a little bit rougher on your hands. But this is a beautiful stitch in my opinion, and it works up incredibly squishy and extra thick and just makes a beautiful stitch pattern. You can change colors. It's just a beautiful stitch to work with, in my opinion. The thermal stitch is done so that it is super thick. So you're basically getting 2 single crochets back to back. And this is a work in progress over here. And we'll start from scratch, but I just kind of wanted to show you what it looks like as we go along. So you can kind of get an idea ahead of time of what you're looking at. Makes it a little bit easier than trying to get it from the very start. So you can get an idea of what you're looking at from kind of a in progress project, and then we'll go back to the start and go from there. So we're only using single crochets for this particular stitch pattern, which makes it pretty easy to learn in the grand scheme of things. But just know that kind of finding your space can be a little bit tricky, especially when you first start. So we'll go back and do, like I said, the beginning. I just want to kind of let you see what you're going to be working into. Like I said, this is worked in kind of a double thick pattern. So you have a single crochet on, I'll do it this way, a single crochet on the left side and a single crochet on the right side. And with that, we're going to be working into essentially the front loop, or I guess the back loop of the stitch on top, and then what was the front loop but now looks like the back loop of the stitch on the bottom. And so you're going to be working through both. I think some of the tutorials online, one of them says like the horizontal bar from this stitch below, and I'm not sure my brain meshed with that as easily as I would have liked it to. So you're really just working into what then looks like the 2 back loops, but from 2 different rows of stitches. So when you go to pick up your stitches, you're going to go in through the back loop. So if normally I would be holding my project like this and going under both of the V's, I'm only going to go into this back loop of the V on that stitch before. Let me move these out of the way. So we're going to go into the back loop here, which is in this V. And then we're going to go into the remaining loop, which now also looks like the back loop of the row before as well. So instead of having 2 strands from the same V or the same single crochet stitch, we're going to have 1 from this stitch and 1 from the row below when we put it onto our hook. So there we go. So you're almost going to hold your work sideways instead of maybe front to back like you would have normally worked a single crochet stitch. And then of course just finish it like a single crochet. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. So let's start from scratch. Now, a couple of important things. There are cotton poly blends out there that are beautiful, beautiful yarns. And they work up fantastically well. They're a little bit softer. In my opinion, maybe even a little bit easier to work with. However, when you are making a hot plate, a trivet, etc., you want to be mindful that you are using 100% cotton. 100% cotton. Not 85%, not 95%. And the reason why is if it is part acrylic, it will melt. If it is part polyester, it can catch on fire. So please do not light your house on fire. Make sure you only use 100% cotton yarn for this. I don't go fancy for this yarn at all. I think this is maybe $3 at my local Michael's, and keep it simple. Keep it simple. And if you're wanting to learn a new project, I think this is a great way to do it because the yarn is super inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. You can make a project up in probably a night or two. Like I said, it is a little bit harder on my hands to work with cotton yarn, so it does take me a little bit extra time, but I think it's absolutely beautiful when it's done and super practical. All right. So like I said, 100% cotton yarn, non-negotiable. If you're going to be touching something hot with these, please, please, please do not melt your hard work and do not catch your hard work on fire. Those are the rules. So we are going to start. This calls for a size H hook, which I have here. If you are a little bit tight with your tension, I would highly suggest sizing up a hook. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to give you a little bit more room since you are working into kind of a tricky area where you need to be able to get under both. And I would say even with a size H hook, when it comes to the end here, it likes to get a little tight. So just be mindful of that. You may want to size up a hook. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to make a coaster. Cotton yarns also really perform well for coasters. Anything that needs to be absorbent. If you decide that you want to make something like a beach cover-up, that could also be really fun to make in cotton yarn. That one you could use a blend. So cotton and linen, cotton and acrylic, cotton and nylon, cotton and whatever suits your fancy. But not for anything that's going to be in touch with hot things. Please be super careful. Just so you can also get kind of a size reference. This is probably about 7 inches wide, and I did 30 stitches across. This is probably about 5.5 inches across, and I did 25 stitches. So I'm going to go for even smaller than that today for the sake of this project, and just kind of doing a sample. And I'm going to only go, I think I'm going to do 15, I think I'll do 10. I think 10 seems to be plenty big for a coaster. All right, so we are going to start. If you are new to crochet, we'll go a little bit slower, but I also have a tutorial up on how to crochet, so I would highly suggest starting there and then coming back to this one later if you need it. So we are going to go up through our pinkies, we're going to go back through our pointer and middle finger, and then wrap over 2 if you need it for a little extra tension support. And then I'm just going to chain 10. Perfect. And then since I like to keep my stitches even numbers, I'm going to chain 1 more for a turning chain. But this stitch can be worked over any number of stitches. You could make a 9 by 11 if you so choose, if you want something super big. All right, so now we're going to go back into our second loop from the hook and single crochet all the way back across. Now, again, like I mentioned, you may want to go up a hook if you crochet tight at all, especially for that foundation chain. And then make sure when you go back across, give yourself maybe a little bit extra space than you normally would. There are 2 reasons here. One, because this stitch is so dense, you're gonna need a little bit extra room. And 2, we're working with cotton, and cotton just is not super stretchy. It's not, the stitches can be stretchy, but cotton in and of itself is a little bit more finicky to work with, especially 100% cotton. If you were using a cotton blend, that story might be a little bit different, but I would suggest making sure you give yourself plenty of room by either sizing up or using lighter tension. All right, so when we get to the end of our first row, you can see here I left myself a lot of room down here, and this is why I think showing you in a work in progress is helpful, because we need both loops, or sorry, one loop from both stitches, or from both stitches. Yeah, both stitches. Words are hard some days. All right, so we are going to chain one like we normally would for a single crochet project, and we are going to come into the back loop of the row we just did, and then when we did our chain and we used the back loop, we're going to go back into kind of the front loop. There we go. And we're going to single crochet that one. And then we're going to go into the back loop again. And then if you need to, you can kind of rotate and see the swirl a little bit from our foundation chain. And we're just going to go right up the middle there. And single crochet. And back loop and loop from my chain and single crochet and back loop and back loop of the foundation chain. And again, back loop. And again, if you need a little bit of support, you can see here we have, let's go through both. So you can see both loops on that foundation chain. We just want to split the difference. So we end up with 2 loops, just like we would going under a normal V from a single crochet. We want to capture just the back loop and just the foundation chain loop. Only one on each. You don't have to get both pieces of either. Here we go. So back loop and back loop and pull it right on up. And back loop and back loop. And here's where it's important to know your stitch count. Now, obviously I can see my last stitch on this one, but when you get farther along in your work, this last one tends to kind of collapse underneath the end here. So it might look like this on the end of your project, and it becomes very easy to lose your last stitch. So you might just have to kind of pull it over to find that last V. So don't forget this little one hanging off the end, or else you're going to end up creating a nice triangle, which may or may not be your intent. So we will find our last 2 loops for us to go under. Again, one from the single crochet row and one from, oops, I think I split my yarn. Let's back out. There we go. And one from that foundation chain. Perfect. So now we have row number 1 of our single crochet row in the actual pattern. So now you can kind of start to see, I'm going to go single crochet into single crochet instead of single crochet into the chain. So chain 1 and turn your work. And this does make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to go into my single crochet and then down into that bottom single crochet. And then make my single crochet stitch. And next up, going to find my next single crochet on top and my single crochet from the row below. There we go. And my single crochet V up top to my single crochet at the bottom. And we're capturing one loop from each stitch. So single crochet at the top, single crochet at the bottom. You'll grab both loops. Single crochet, loop, single crochet bottom row, and pull up a loop. Single crochet 1 and single crochet 2. And again, just to kind of check in, we have our V. On the back here, we have 2 horizontal bars. We have a longer one and a shorter one. This longer one is the part from that single crochet from the row before. So in case you were getting lost at any point, slow that down just a little bit for you. And this is one that I think I probably watched 10 tutorial videos, and I was trying to read the directions in different patterns, and I could not figure out what horizontal bar. But it's just a single crochet back loop from both stitches. So we're essentially crocheting sideways. All right. Now, for sake of time, I will let you continue on making your coaster or whatever you would like to make. But I'm going to show you how to finish this just so you are aware, because we don't want our project to end offset like this. We want to make sure that we have nice clean edges so that all of our project looks nice and crisp and clean. This is where I started, so it has these nice little back bumps that were left open. And then the top has the nice pretty V's like a finished off single crochet. So let's talk about finishing a project. If you decide that you want a little loop, I usually chain 10 and then start my single crochets going back across and finishing my project over here. Totally up to you. You could also finish off your row, single crochet across, and then do a loop and then kind of slip stitch it back together and then weaving your ends. It's up to you. I just think doing it before you do your single crochet stitches helps it be a little bit more sturdy because you've worked it back in a little bit longer. But definitely up to you on how you want to do that. So to do the loop, we're just gonna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that would be how you would want to make your little loop. And then you would just go back across in the same way you would as a single crochet. We're just going to also add the loop from the row below. Okay, so we're going to go in underneath both loops of our top V. So we're going to go in like a normal single crochet, and then we're going to make a friend. Boop. So we're going to still capture that one from the row below, just like our normal thermal stitch. And there you go. So we're going to go in through 2 under both of those V's on top, or both sides of the V on top, and we are going to go into the row below, make them have a friend, and then we're going to finish our single crochet stitch. So in under both, and then grab that last one to make it a thermal stitch, and single crochet. Under both, and grab the one from below. And there you have it. So finishing your project is really the same as a thermal stitch. You're going to still grab both of those same loops. We're just grabbing the extra loop on the top single crochet stitch as well. So under both, give them a friend, and single crochet. Under both loops, give them a friend, and single crochet. So the thermal stitch is really just adding that last bar, that last side of the V from the row below, and it makes a nice dense fabric that I think is, first of all, I think it's stunning, but it also makes for a nice hot plate, trivet, pot holder, whatever you want to call it. I have seen some that use this pattern for mittens. To each their own, but I don't think your hands are going to be very useful with those mittens on. I think unless you use much lighter yarn, which of course is doable. But I think as far as the thermal stitch, I like it more for home goods. Certainly up to you though. If you want to use it for mittens, I would probably go down to at least a DK weight yarn or number 3 yarn. This is a worsted weight number 4, and like I said, this would be dense as a mitten. So if you decide you want to make something that is not a home goods based type product or finished project, I would suggest sizing down in your yarn. But the thermal stitch is super fun to make. I think once you start to get the rhythm of it, I know for me it just becomes almost cathartic, because I'm just making, for these anyways, I'm just making squares. You can change color in it just like you would do any other color change. And if you want to see more on that, please let me know in the comments below. But I think it's beautiful. I think it works up nicely. I think it's very pretty. But like I said, be mindful of what size yarn you use. I think this is a really good way to just kind of get into your rhythm, get into your flow, watch something fun on TV, decompress for a little bit. You don't have to think about it. You're not counting a bunch of stitches. And even if you do lose count, usually it's 30 or 25. You're not doing a big blanket with 150 something stitches. So it makes for a really cool sit down, decompress, knock out a project in a night or two, get that sense of completion. I think it makes for a really fun evening. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know below. And as always, like and subscribe, and thanks for coming along.